killing grass and moving dirt. Because when you build playgrounds, you do a lot of killing grass and moving dirt. And then it's about 12 years of community engagement in South Louisiana. And so, as Betsy said, I've been working for 12 years with my students in biological engineering. I teach a first-year design class where we work with different public school communities to design and then construct playgrounds that the kids really truly design. Kids are the true experts at play. They are the ones who are playing every day. I think sometimes we forget, even my college students who are first-year students at LSU, generally freshmen, 18, 17, 19 years old, even they have forgotten a little bit about how to play. And so we really can connect with the kids, use their ideas, also take into consideration what the teachers think, what the parents think, what the administration thinks, and believe me, they are different things. And so the students really have to figure out how do you accommodate different viewpoints into a single design, and that's really what I want my students, one of the things that I want my students to do. So, so I'm working on this book, and I do have a chapter on community, which is a very nebulous term because it all depends exactly on how it's defined. But I have a chapter called Playground Rules, and so, and by this I don't mean the typical playground rules. What might be a typical playground rule?
Don't push.
Don't push, exactly.
No throwing stones.
No throwing
Jump
stones.
off a seesaw when you're down. You're right. I don't think they even have seesaws anymore. Probably not.
We do have seesaws, and luckily now they have tires under each side, so that if you are the kid that gets up off the bottom, and you come and you bounce, you at least bounce on something instead of crashing your head. That's one of my most vivid memories from kindergarten is a little kid getting up and anyway. And so I have these playground rules, so not the typical, don't bully, don't push, don't get off the bottom of the seesaw. But it's just, again, from working for 12 years with community, what are some of the rules, if you will, for working on playgrounds, which actually also works into how do we work with communities and how we try to accomplish things together. So the first rule is don't do it alone, and I have a really great picture, which will show. But essentially, for us, every time we design and build a playground, it takes over 500 people, and the vast majority of those people are children. And we really try to involve, again, every single person in the process. And the beautiful thing about working together is that you could take any one of us out of the equation, and the whole thing would still be finished. And so really trying to engage every constituency you have and get buy-in. You're not going to agree on everything, but if everybody has a voice and has some say, I think that really that's how you accomplish wonderful things, because nobody can do it alone. And so that was sort of my first rule of the road. And I do remember them, I just don't remember them in order. The second one is, once it's yours, it's yours. So I've had experiences where a school will call and say, hey, can you and your students come and work with us to develop a playground design? And we will do that, and we'll build it. And then 3 years down the line, five years down the line, even 10 years down the line, the schools will call us again. And they'll say, hey, when you finished our playground, we had 300 kids at the school. We are thrilled with the playground. It's still working wonderfully, but guess what? After Katrina happened, we took 100 more kids at the school, and now we've had an influx of people moving into our neighborhood, and all of a sudden our school has 600 kids. And you designed a playground to accommodate 300 kids. Can you come again? Or, and build us some more. Or we exploded so fast that we had to construct temporary buildings or T-buildings on the grounds, and we had no choice but to run over the grades 3 through 5 playground because we had to accommodate the kids at this location. Can you work with us on that? We've had Audubon Elementary. We did a playground for them in 2007. They just contacted us this fall and said, we just added a new pre-K wing, and we need a pre-K playground. And the playground that you design is for school-age children, 5 to 12. We need something for 3 and 4-year-olds. so can you work with us? And one of the things that I've done this fall as a director of CCEL is I'm running a proposal writing institute where we have students and community partners, lots of teachers, who are all working on a separate proposal that they're going to write. And we have the pre-K teacher, one of them at Audubon Elementary, who is going to write the proposal to try to get the funds to build that playground. So once it's yours, it's yours. You kind of can't drop a school. It's like once you've worked with them once, you want to continue to work with them. And even crazy things happen with this sometimes. There's a school that we designed for, my class worked with in 2007, and we were into the middle of the semester when we found out that the school was going to be closed. And so essentially all the kids at that school were going to be going to Dufrock, which was getting a new playground. And so I was not too worried. We went ahead and finished the design, and we did the process. But that was not a design that we ever picked up or tried to get money for because the school was going to close the next year. I got a group of concerned parents that called me about 6 weeks ago, several of whom are LSU faculty, saying, can you build a playground at our school? Which school is it? South Boulevard. What? It's supposed to close in 2008. I never heard otherwise. Oh, well, a bunch of us got really excited, and we really didn't want our school to close, and it's really important. It's a French immersion school, and it's the only public school that does this in the parish, and really we banded together, and we petitioned the school board, and it's still open. So I contacted my folks again, and we're, hey, what's going on? You know, oh, it's going to close 2 years from now. You know, it's kind of like free beer tomorrow. It keeps on, you know, it's going to close, but it hasn't closed. And so I talked to this group of people, and I felt like I was going to have to tell them, hey, in 2 years from now, this is going to close down anyway, so do you really want to make the effort? And they said, we have made the effort, and we probably are going to have to move, but can you design a playground that we can move? Yes, we can do that. So now we're working with them again. So again, once it's yours, it's yours. Now I'm going to figure out what the third one was. Like I said, I know what they are, I just don't remember them in order. Next one is little victories can have big impacts. So I think a lot of times when you work with service, you can get, and with community, you can be overwhelmed by something, and it seems like you're never going to get it done. You're never going to get to that golden outcome place, and you sit embroiled in the process. But just by chipping away at the same thing for a long period of time, you really, really can get a lot done. So we were working with the school, and we're in the middle of developing a playground, and I took my students to meet with the kids and with the principal, and the principal said, oh, right now we don't have recess at the school. What? You have a playground, it's not the best playground in the world, but no recess? And you know, she essentially said there was so little to do on the playground that it just did nothing but cause behavior issues, and she didn't want to deal with behavior issues, so she canceled recess. And we were sort of like, you know, if we can build a playground, will you have recess? We'll consider it. So, and I had no idea that, you know, there wasn't a recess until, you know, she had said that. And we were in the middle of the process. Well, we did finish the playground, and recess was established at the school. And we've had this happen a number of times where once we get a playground at the school, recess will be extended. So it'll go from, say, 10 minutes to 20 every day. And so those little victories can really have big impacts. Penny drives for students. I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I think it's not really the best thing in the world all the time to ask students to buy their own playground. But the schools who have done penny drives and raise $400, $300, and we're talking about $300, $400, $500 out of a $50,000 budget, $40,000 budget. No matter how much they raise, those students feel like they own the playground. They feel like they bought the thing. Look, this is the slide I bought. They will take you and show you all the things that they bought themselves. And it's a wonderful way for the students and the community to take ownership of the playground. And so a lot of times we will ask, or at least suggest, that the school do a penny drive or a change drive, because it is those kinds of things that really build a lot of community buy-in. University Terrace, close to here, we did a playground with them in 2009, and they decided to do a change drive, and they had coins from something like 20 different countries, because a lot of the students who go to that school come from other countries. So they had to figure out how to switch them in and everything, but they thought it was awesome because like everybody's buying in. I do have some pictures. Hopefully these will come pretty soon. But right after Hurricane Katrina, I was doing some work with the YK Coalition, which is a bunch of children's groups that got together to really try to impact the quality of life of young people who had come to this community, mostly from Katrina, but really also from Rita as well. And we were working at Renaissance Village. Did any of you get a chance to visit or see Renaissance Village? Okay, largest trailer park city in the history of the United States, set up in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. It had about 1,800 people when the population was at its highest, and about 640 kids. And FEMA considered this a temporary community. Hey, and we did too. Yes. But FEMA was considering the temporary piece of things. So when we were working to try to build playgrounds inside Renaissance Village for the kids, FEMA said no, because it's a temporary community and playgrounds would encourage people to stay. I have pictures of Renaissance Village, so you can see what people were being encouraged to stay in. And so we were arguing with FEMA.
I think it's going to come on.
And we decided that we would do parallel operations. So while we were sort of arguing with FEMA about trying to get playgrounds inside Renaissance Village, there was also a group of people that decided, okay, if we can't build it inside Renaissance Village, let's build it outside Renaissance Village, but close, so that people inside Renaissance Village can access it. And so there is a playground called the Renaissance Playground, and it is in the town square in Baker, Louisiana. It was about a mile away from Renaissance Village. There was temporary bus service set up for it, and we thank you for doing that, Jonathan. I appreciate it a lot.
Don't thank me just yet.
Okay. We dedicated that playground in April of 2006, and by October, we had playgrounds up inside Renaissance Village because FEMA finally relented. And so we wound up with a playground outside Renaissance Village as well as one inside Renaissance Village. So it was a little victory, but I think it had a big impact. And those are just some of the examples. Could that rule?
Okay.
Now I think I can switch over to PowerPoint.
So, okay, do you know how I can get rid of that menu?
You have to do it on the, yeah, using that thing.
I don't know either.
There
Hey,
you go. You did.
we're up. Yay. Okay.
Wow.
So let me show you. I'm going to get back and show you some of these pictures later. But this is the whole you can't computer world. And I love this picture because I think all the kids really drive home how many people it really takes to do a playground. And that was a grand opening cutting at Bruley Elementary School, which we did in March. And the New Orleans Saints actually helped us to raise funds for this. And I'm believing that some of the people in this room voted daily for 30 days to make sure that Bruley was one of the play on, that's not right, NFL Play 60 grant recipients. And we were. And people all over the United States voted for this playground 2,500 times a day for 30 days. So it took a whole lot of people, in addition to all the kids that had input. I don't think you can see the Saints in this picture, but they're kind of like back over here in the corner. And there were about 5 of them who came to the groundbreaking. And the best part was Tracy Porter, interception, run back for touchdown. He was there, and he went high-stepping and kind of sprinting all around the playground. And every single little kid was running as fast as they could after him, and all going, ah! It was pretty awesome. But there was a lot of,
Did they have any better luck than the Colts?
What about the Colts?
Did they have any better luck than the Colts?
Let's hope. Yeah, no kidding. Okay, here's the once it's yours, it's yours. I know I already kind of talked about the examples, but this was the initial playground that we did at Ogden Elementary. So the left is, they used to call that a ship. That was the structure that they had before, and the kids cried the day it was hauled away, but it was so dangerous that they just could not leave it up, so they had nothing but a blank field. And then the picture on the right was the new one that we designed, and of course now we're back at the school working on a pre-K playground. One of the neat things about the story I just finished telling you about the Renaissance playground, we worked with the Baton Rouge Rotary to construct the Renaissance playground a mile outside of Renaissance Village, and they had $10,000 left over at the end of everything, and they donated it to our playground project, and that's what funded half of that little playground you see on the right.
Tell me what you mean when you say you designed, because obviously those are some pieces that are kind of coming, not prefab exactly, but...
They are essentially prefab. I had to work a lot with LSU in terms of liability, and that's a really important part of working with community as well. And essentially we have a chain of liability to make sure that none of my students or me or LSU is at fault. But with that said, that play structure breaks into components right down to the post. And so you have the, you can, and this is what I always have my students do, I'm like, you can open up a play catalog and go to page 38 and pick that particular playground, but your goal really is to talk to the kids and find out exactly what they want, and you are in charge of picking all of the play components and the manner in which they go together, and any sort of other supporting parts of the design. Exactly, traffic, layout, active play, passive play, you know, elements of play, swinging, sliding, brachiating, climbing, spinning, balancing, and how do you know, fix all those things.
Okay.
How am I doing? Okay. All right. These were some of the pictures of Renaissance Village. The picture on the bottom left is one of the playgrounds that we designed. It was for little kids, and then you see the sort of the long view. That was from the police station that you had to run through on the entrance to Renaissance Village, looking down the street, and the other was just a drainage issue with some of the trailers. Okay, fourth rule is to assume as little as possible. I know at least part of engineering or being an engineer is making assumptions about particular things that you want to state and justify, but that's what's going to help you move through the design process more quickly.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all. I think we're having
Must be this.
an interesting technology day. This is not going to happen tonight.
Yeah, pretty.
We're going to lose
Actually,
this
6
today. Because Sarah and I are talking again tonight, and this is not going to happen tonight. So, once you do playground design for a while, you do tend to see things that are similar or that happen a lot, and so it might be an assumption that you make. But for me, every time I walk into a new situation, I really try to assume as little as possible. So one time my students and I were getting a grand tour of the whole school grounds from the principal, and she was 100% serious when she said, I separate the girls from the boys, and it's because the boys beat up the girls. I'm sorry, it's because the girls beat up the boys all the time. So it's her third through fifth graders. She didn't have a whole lot of equipment. She had a basketball court and then just a really old climber. And she would always separate the girls and the boys, and they would rotate week to week. They do different things, but she never put them together because the girls would beat up the boys. And so you just, you know, sometimes things like that happen, and you don't even, it's not something you would normally conceive with. So I try really hard not to assume anything. We designed a playground for the Louisiana School for the Deaf, and I just happened to be in Florida in the middle of the design process, visiting my father's family, and he was bragging about me, like, because your parents brag on you. And he essentially was bragging about me in some bleachers, because my little half-sister was playing softball, and one of her little teammates was deaf. And she came up to me after the game, she and her mom, and signed to me that when I do this playground, because that's what he was bragging about, this playground at the School for the Deaf, could I design a playground that she could play on? And she had a cochlear implant. And these are devices that are surgically implanted in the ear that help kids to hear better, or they can pick up vibrations. But the static electricity buildup in a cochlear implant means that if a child slides down a hard plastic slide like the one on that bottom picture there, they can blow out the electrodes in a cochlear implant and have to have surgery
Wow.
again to replace it.
Wow.
And so she was really struggling with this. And that is something that I never would have conceived of in 100 years. But you just can't assume anything if you can help it. These pictures themselves, I will tell you, this is the very first playground that we designed at Beechwood Elementary School. And this is a different chapter, but I'm just briefly going to just tell you all that I made more mistakes with this playground than any one that I did because it was the first one. But it's also the one that was most dear to my heart. We finished it in August of 2000. And in 2003, the desegregation law case that Baton Rouge had with the federal government was settled. And as a result, Beechwood closed. And so our playground, which we had really designed to last for 20 years, went free because the school closed, not because the playground failed or anything. And so we decided to pick up this playground and move it. And that's what we did. So this is actually a playground twice, if you will. And we also supplemented it with a lot of additional equipment. It's now at Jefferson Terrace.
I take it that involves more than just picking up and putting it in a pickup.
Yeah, you assume correctly. The next rule is to listen. And I tend to think that listening is something, especially when working with community, that you're not just doing with your ears, you're also doing it with your heart, you're doing it with your eyes, you're doing it with every sense that you've got. And it's not just about what is said, but it's also really about what's not said. Because for me, a lot of times what's not said is really more important. Because it's sometimes it's big things that people don't say that you realize are incredibly important, or that you might see if you're looking for it, that you may not otherwise. So I love the movie A Christmas Story. Are y'all familiar with that? Little Ralphie wants a BB gun for Christmas, and his mom says, "You'll shoot your eye out," and Santa says, "You'll shoot your eye out." He can't get it's the mother, he calls it the mother BB gun block. Okay, well we have the principal swings block, or the teacher monkey bar block. I had 3 students break their arms last year on this swing, and therefore I took the swing out, and I absolutely do not want to see another swing at this school. And so you listen, and you try to have a conversation, and you talk about playground safety and the fact that if you surface the material, which means you put something soft under and around the play equipment to break falls, kids are really most likely really not going to break their arms. And sometimes we decide to put swings all together, and sometimes the principal is absolutely not, I don't care what you say, and that's fine. So we listen and we negotiate and we have conversations together. My students will inevitably tell me when they talk to kids about what the kids want in the playground, you know, "Doc, they want a pool with a whale in it. We can't do a pool with a whale in it." So I know you can't do a pool with a whale in it, but that's the beauty of being an engineer. How do you translate a pool with a whale in it into something that those kids are going to be really excited about? It's their pool with a whale in it, even if it's not really a pool with a whale in it. And so listening is really important. But again, in terms of what's not said, can y'all see the picture, that bottom picture very well? It's one of my students, and he's standing on top of some equipment, which has nothing soft under and around it to break falls, which is supposed to be a signal to the people at the school that the kids aren't supposed to play on it, but it's typically not a signal that the school always recognizes as such. So it's a little bit dangerous because there's exposed concrete footers, and falling on your head onto concrete is a really bad thing. But if you can see the chain link fence in the back of that picture, there is a cemetery behind this chain link fence. And the principal told us when we visited here, we keep the kids off the playground on the days where funerals are held close to the fence. And the reason is that the students will run up to the fence and say, "Is he really dead and can I see him?" Or they will offer condolences. Instead of playing, they're offering condolences to the funeral goers. If they're Scottish rites, the kids will yell, "Bagpipes!" And they'll sing and dance. And when there are 21 gun salutes, they will hit the deck because they think they're being shot at. And so for all of those reasons, we don't have recess on the days when there are funerals next to this fence. And so, what kind of nonverbal message does that send to kids who grow up playing in the shadow of death with a very flimsy barrier to separate them? And what do we say? What are we saying if we do erect a barrier? My students and I had so many conversations about this. You know, and some of my students, I had one student who was an Iraq War veteran who said, I don't see what the big deal is. Kids should be aware of their own mortality. He left my class after 5 weeks for Iraq. He got called up. And I thought, it's an interesting perspective. Most of my students came to the conclusion, yes, let's try to put a green barrier there. One of the teachers at the school is now working with us in the Proposal Writing Institute, and she wants to put a hard, tall, big barrier. And you know, maybe the kids can do murals on it, etc. But they want a huge barrier there. Here's another interesting example of verbal non-communication. So this is an area for pre-kindergarten and kindergarten teachers. And this is sort of the long view, so you can see an old climber and something called a bucket ball right here. But if you look at this chain link fence, which has barbed wire, and you see this little play set here, the 2 kids who live in that house have more play equipment than the 60 kids at once that play on this playground. And what nonverbal message does that send to those 60 kids? If you probably can't see it from here.
And the fence is still standing?
Yes, so it is. You see this little chair? Okay, right next to this little chair, there's something called a swinging gate. Okay, it's in red, and the blow-up picture's right here. Okay, and when my students and I went to visit this playground and we saw this gate, it is a gate to nowhere. We just literally started calling it the gate to nowhere. And we were told that there used to be play equipment there, but it was torn out because it was dangerous, but that for some reason they left the gate. So we're like, why do you have a gate to nowhere on your playground? And we talked to the principal, and she said, I have kindergarten teachers who line up their kids in front of the gate and ask the kids, where do you want to go? And the kids scream out a location and run through the gate. And so what we thought was a gate to nowhere is actually a portal to everywhere. I thought that was awesome. But a great way to use a swinging gate, which is not supposed to be part of a playground. My last rule is to watch out for unintended consequences. And I know people who do community work. There's a woman named Janet Eiler, and she always says, complexity is not an issue, it's a feature. And I always try to remember that whenever I'm working with community. And it's actually the complexities where I think I have the most fun at this point. So at Beechwood, that first playground that we did, my students spent so much time trying to figure out where to place benches on the play area. And the reason was that you want areas of passive play where kids can sit and talk and converse and you know, play little games where they might be sitting down, they were under trees, but they were trying not to impact the root zone of the tree. I mean, my students spent a lot of time and a lot of care placing benches throughout this design. And the very next year, after the playground was built, I took my next year's class to see the playground that the previous year had finished. And the teacher's giving us a grand tour. And you walk by a bench. She says, we are so glad you put that playground right there, that bench right there, because when our kids are being bad, we make them sit on the bench and watch the kids play on the playground, and that's just great. And that was a completely unintended consequence. We intended for that to be used as a play space, a platform for play, not a punishment, an instrument of torture. But
stocks are over there.
Time out.
But yeah, but I mean that's going to happen. And that's totally fine. I mean,
So you took credit for it?
Well, people are going to pick it up and use it in the ways in which it's going to work for them, and we think that's completely fine. Although we did say privately later, hey, you know, just so you know. USA Today published a study about air quality in May of last year, and they took air samples from all over the United States at different schools, and including 3 in Baton Rouge, and including at least 1 where we had designed a playground. And here we are trying to bust our butts to get kids outside and moving around more. And the air quality in Baton Rouge was in the first percentile for particular contaminants, one of which we were 20 times higher than the level known to cause cancer. So here we are. That's an unintended consequence. We're trying to get kids outside and they're breathing in this air. And so I have a group of students that are kind of working on a project right now to try to measure air quality over time. They're just getting started. They got a College of Ag undergrad student research grant to do that. The bottom picture is of something called the Cutie Patootie Center. And again, this was the playground that we ultimately designed inside Renaissance Village. This was for little kids, 2, 3, 4-year-olds. And they told me, do not worry about designing the concrete piece of this, and do not worry about the gate. Just worry about the stuff that's going to go inside that area. I said, fine. This is shortly before the opening of the playground, and can you take a look at the 3 fence panels that you see on the ground? The architectural company that did this design followed the fire code. And the fire code says that you can have openings in between slots that are 4 inches wide. They shouldn't be more than 4 inches wide, but they can be 4 inches wide. A 4-inch wide opening on a fence is a head entrapment. Head entrapments most often impact 2-year-olds. This playground was for 2-year-olds. So essentially, we were surrounded by hundreds of head entrapments, and I had to say, you cannot use the fire code. You've got to use the American Society for Testing of Materials guide. You cannot have any head entrapments. You've got to be less than 3.5 inches. They had to reorder everything. Swap out all those panels, which excuse me, is what they were doing here. If you look at the ones that are hanging, they're much closer together. No head entrapments. Final is playground safety laws. I'm all for them. I'm all for playground safety, but the interesting thing is that if you pass laws that are too stringent, and park and recreation companies and schools that can't keep up with the laws, if it costs too much, they're going to take out their playgrounds to stay in compliance. And that is an unintended consequence that a lot of states have actually gone through, where they've passed stringent laws and then unpassed them because so many playgrounds have been removed. So you do have to watch out for unintended consequences. And those were my playground rules, and I know we kind of don't have a whole lot of time to talk, but I would love to get y'all's input on this and anything else, and have any conversation that you might have about community engagement. Thank you for your time.
Do you work with the School of Landscape Architecture at all?
I don't. I've known folks over there, and we're real friendly, but I typically haven't, done that. There are a lot of groups that work with us through the design process. So the volunteer install process, we save money to have volunteers install the playgrounds, and that's where we tend to get a lot of community input. So we have had landscape architecture students come out, we've had construction management students come out, we've had a whole lot of groups and professions represented in that process, which is great. And I'm happy to work with landscape architects. I'm not trying to keep anybody out.
It just seemed like there'd be a lot of overlap.
There's definitely some, for sure. I agree.
And where do you get the grants for the funding?
Anywhere I can find them. So I mentioned Rotary. There was a program through the Board of Regents that no longer exists, but they funded some of the earlier ones. We've gotten a couple of Kaboom grants. We try to do some private fundraising, more or less. Happens sometimes. We get the Kiwanis clubs, the Lions clubs.
See?
The UPC, thank you. UPC gave us a couple $1,000s for, very kindly for the University Terrace playground last year. So kind of anywhere you can get them. Family foundations is something we're focused on right now. There's a lot of foundation money that's sent out of state because there's not really good projects that come from inside the state, and so we're really trying to target those and go after them. And in fact, this proposal writing institute that we're doing, I've got 11 participants writing each to a different foundation, and many of those foundations are in the state. And we have vetted them, we've called and said, are you interested in entertaining this kind of a project? And they've said yes. If they say no, we don't bother. But if they say yes, we are ready.
Have any of the kids that were benefiting from the playgrounds or had input in the playgrounds become your students?
Not that I'm aware of. The only thing that happened on that is we did a playground at the McBain's Children's Developmental Center. And the way that the executive director, when she approached us, she had gotten one Eagle Scout to do a project to build a climber at the school, and she used that as leverage to to get us involved, but then to try to leverage a lot of other community grants.
Mhm.
And the cool thing about that project is we had a technical writing class that actually wrote a grant to the Baton Rouge Area Foundation that was ultimately funded for $50,000 to cover a lot of the playground expenses. But that little Eagle Scout became our student. And he has gone on to graduate, and he's now working as an engineer.
Okay.
Your rule, once you have it, it's yours. Is that how
Yes.
you phrase it?
Once it's yours, it's yours.
Okay. To me, that could be read in the wrong way in the sense of once it's yours to take care of, and we're out of here. And I love the fact that what you really mean with that is it's long-term commitment and long-term partnerships, because I think that's sometimes what happens with community outreach and community work is that you go and you do something and you disappear. And I don't think that builds the kinds of relationships like you have. And I think that's probably your most important rule is that it's that commitment, that long-term care.
Maybe I'll expand on that in the chapter. I think that's really a smart thing to drive home. And also the fact that we have had so much input from other groups. So we couldn't do a lot of what we do with a company called Aramark. And they're a corporation, and they subcontract with EBR schools. And they provide all the grounds and maintenance for the playgrounds. And I've been working with the head of that for the last 10 or 11 years. And based on playground safety, he sent his staff to be certified as playground safety inspectors. And they inspect those playgrounds every year, and they give me a list of all the schools in order of need. And so I never have to pick. It's really easy. People have asked, how do you choose which schools you're going to work with? Well, I'll just go to the list and pick number 1 and number 2, and we kind of move from there. And then we also try to be available. A long time ago, there's so much demand now that there's no way I can keep up with it with a class that I teach once a year. And so I hire my best students from the class, and they work for me year-round. And we are constantly taking new designs and trying to help out schools as much as we can. We're now getting outside EBR parish, so we've done 1 in Ascension. We're working on the 2nd playground in Ascension Parish, and we're working on 2 in Eberville Parish right now. So, yeah, so that they allow us to do the long-term piece because they provide all the maintenance on the back end, including the money to keep it maintained. So, yes?
Pursuant to that, have you ever had the experience where there's been some territorialism? Because, the public schools do have supposedly a facilities management or, people whose responsibility it is to construct playgrounds and to maintain and things like that. And do they ever feel, and I know that they never feel like they have the resources to really do it. And so, of course, these classes coming in and forming partnerships is great, but have you ever?
Never. And I think part of it is because, again, the head of grounds and maintenance, he introduced himself to me right after we completed the first playground. And when we did that, he hadn't been on board yet. He had just started. And he came to me after that, sort of dedication ceremony and said, if you can find the money for play equipment, because we just don't have it in the budget, if you find that money, I will surface that stuff for free to you. And that's 25% of a budget. And so I'm thrilled that he won the Outstanding Partner Award last year for the Gulf South Summit. And when I wrote his letter of nomination, it's $110,000 that he has pledged in kind over an 11-year period for playground safety surfacing, and we've never had to pay for it. Now, the economy, he's told me I can't guarantee anymore. So now we're trying to write in for surfacing to pay for that as well. Territoriality came up with that Beechwood playground. When we picked that thing up and we were going to move it, Aramark completely made the decision. We did not. And I'm thrilled that we didn't because there were 5 principals fighting tooth and nail over that equipment because of how much you need it. But again, he's just picking who needs it the most. I have tried 3 times unsuccessfully to get a proposal funded by the Lowe's Charitable and Educational Foundation. They do playgrounds. So here, you got to go meet with the store manager, then the district manager, and they get all excited and they say, yeah, we think we've got a really good shot. We run the whole proposal by them. We have the principal, we have students, we have me, we all go and we talk. Everybody's really excited. It doesn't get funded. Well, here comes Lowe's. The max you can get through that grant program is $25,000. Here comes Lowe's to the school system and says, we're going to give $100,000 to one school. Give me 25 for 4. Let me split it up. I could do some damage with that, but we want it for one school, And we want that school to be in the range of this Lowe's.
So
And
it's a showcase.
And it's the one that's out off Millerville Road, which if you, let me show you the ones in North Baton Rouge that I've been writing for. So, we helped to design that playground. It was this big, big hole. They'll just build it last spring. But I talked to the district manager when, at sort of the kickoff and said, would you be willing to fund another one in North Baton Rouge? She's like, come and talk to me in about 6 or 8 months. And I said, okay, and I'm getting ready to have that conversation. So there is sometimes interesting, I don't know if I call it territoriality, but I think we've been able to really avoid
Interpersonal dynamics.
a lot of it. Yeah, well, there's that too. That's a different story.
Well, and they have an agenda. I mean, Lowe's has an agenda with its philanthropic dollars, and you just have to work with them.
Right, exactly. And we work a lot. We work away. Just keep chipping at it. And we've made a lot of progress. 20 playgrounds in 12 years. I keep saying I want to do every one, and at the rate I'm going, I'll be about 80 when I finish. But still working on it.
How much does the playground cost?
It depends. So if I've got a budget of about $50,000, I'm a really, really happy camper, and I almost never get that. I'm usually in the $30,000 range, and I can deal with that too. And the interesting thing too is the economy. It's harder to get grant money, but because the economy stinks, the playground manufacturers are hurting for business, and the discounts that they are willing to give you are much higher than I have ever been able to get. So right now I can get a 35–38% off list price. So
Wow.
if we pick out all the components and what we need, however much they're listing, I can get that much off. But
They want to move the inventory out.
they want to make a little bit of, they're willing to make a little bit of money,
Yeah.
where before I could get max 25%. So,
Very interesting.
well, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.